Welcome to Mastering the Art of Success. I'm your host, Debbi DiMaggio. We are here today with Terry Healey. Terry is coming to us from Santa Cruz today while I am in New York. Welcome, Terry.
Hi, Debbie. Thanks for
Hi.
having me.
Oh, thanks for joining. I'm so excited, and I'm just so excited to break down your entire life. It's so incredible, and you've done so much. So, I'm going to read your bio, and we're going to flash some wonderful photos, and then we're going to dig in. So, a survivor of life-threatening cancer that left him with a permanent facial difference. Terry Healey's an author, keynote speaker, and business strategist who inspires audiences to face adversity with courage and resilience. In his early 20s, he underwent more than 30 surgeries to reconstruct his face, and that experience taught him how to transform hardship into strength. Terry shares his four key principles for building confidence, embracing change, creating trust, and finding joy in both personal and professional life. He believes the lessons he learned are gifts and uses them to empower others to overcome challenges and celebrate life. Alongside his speaking career, Terry built a successful 35-year track record in high-tech sales and marketing, including being a part of the founding team of a company that achieved a successful IPO. His programs have been delivered to leading organizations such as Cisco, Charles Schwab, Stanford, UC San Francisco, Kaiser Permanente, Guild Sciences, and Northwestern Memorial Hospital. A UC Berkeley grad, Terry is the author of The Resilience Mindset, 2025, at face value, and a contributing writer to several anthologies. His work has appeared in Fast Company, Psychology Today, U.S. News and World Report, and more. Learn more about terryhealey.com. Welcome, Terry. This is so exciting to have you. I'm so grateful that you have the time with your speaking circuit that you seem to be on.
No, I'm happy to be here. Thanks so much, Debbie. I'm excited for the conversation.
Awesome. Okay, well, even though you grew up in Orinda and I grew up in Piedmont, and we went to Cal together and we literally lived across the street from one another. I was a Theta, you were a Zeta, and we have so many, not just friends, but so many very close friends in common that it's so crazy that we're now just meeting.
Amazing. But the world always gets smaller, and so it's great that we finally did.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I really don't know a whole lot other than what we just talked about, but so can you take me back where you grow up, how you grew up, what life was like before you were diagnosed with cancer and the 30 surgeries? So let's go back.
All right. So, yeah, I would say, Debbie, that I was living life on easy street. In high school and through college, for the most part, I was kind of hitting all these milestones and goals that I had set for myself. Life was good. I was a homecoming prince in high school. I was the president of my fraternity. And then out of the blue, this bump starts to form behind the right side of my nose. And it really took a couple of other people to point it out to me and say, hey, your right nostril's flared up. I didn't even notice it, Debbie. So
I can't believe.
finally go to a doctor. Long story short is that I got a diagnosis of this really rare form of cancer called fibrosarcoma, which typically occurs in the extremities. And the treatment for that oftentimes turns into amputation. So my prognosis was not good. It was pretty serious, but they caught it in the early stages. And so I was able to sort of go back to life of being sort of this invincible 21-year-old back at Cal, living life large again. And then that's when I had a major recurrence, and that's when everything changed.
And so
So
you were 21 at that time?
I was 21 at that time. And so, yeah, what was happening was I was having these tingling sensations in my cheek, and nothing looked different, right, from the outside. And so I went back to the doctor. Long story short, there is that they ended up, getting me into surgery as fast as they possibly could. It was pretty scary, the sort of urgency that everything took at that point. And I ended up having a 10.5 hour procedure at that point that resulted in the removal of half my nose, the shelf of my right eye, the muscle and the bone from my right cheek. part of my upper lip, part of my hard palate, and 6 of my teeth. And I woke up attached to my chest because so much tissue had been removed from my cheek and face that they had to transplant shoulder and chest tissue to my face. And so I was attached to my chest for literally 14 days before it could get its own blood supply. And Debbie, when I looked in the mirror at that point, I thought to myself, oh my God, I look like the Elephant Man. And so I was dealing with that suddenly, as well as the fact that this cancer that I had originally been diagnosed with, though it was rare, they thought they had caught it. Now suddenly it's life threatening. So turned my whole world upside down in a big hurry.
And how long were you in the hospital after that first surgery?
I was probably in for about 3 weeks. They had to do
And then,
multiple procedures. Yeah,
and did you go back to college after that?
I did. I went back to Cal. I had a year left. So I had
Okay.
90, you'll remember this given you're the same age. I had about 90 units at that point. So I had almost exactly 1 year of credits left. And so I was able to go back. And for me, being busy and occupied and having other goals and being focused on things besides myself and my appearance and my cancer really helped me, I think, to kind of move my life forward to some degree. So going back to school was a little bit of a cathartic thing for me at that point.
It was good. It was also brave because you were going back a whole different person. And how,
Yes.
so after that, those first couple surgeries, when were the other surgeries after that? Were they just throughout your life or did it happen right away?
Yeah. So basically, I had had about 5 surgeries for the cancer, and then began the process of reconstruction. Right. So unfortunately, they had to wait for everything to heal because it was so major. Then we had to have radiation therapy. And the reconstruction went on for 5 to 6 years. So I had another 25 procedures over the next 5 to 6 years. And it kind of became in some ways, an occupation, right? And I hated that about it. I hated that about it. And so I was fortunate that I had some turning points in my life that sort of helped me eventually say, you know what, enough is enough. I'm not going to do this the rest of my life. I'm not going to keep having surgery. I'm going to move on. But yeah, it was a long journey and it had a big impact on my self esteem and my self confidence.
I can imagine. So with this life-threatening sarcoma cancer, um, and permanent facial difference, do you see it as a gift in disguise?
You know, it's funny. I would never wish this on my own worst enemy, right? But I am grateful for the experience. And there's actually really, I think about 3 different things in terms of the gifts that I gained out of my experience. And I think this isn't uncommon, Debbie, for people that go through major adversity. I think you'll find some common threads. But for me, it was really about gratitude, number one. And I can share how that started and how it continues. But gratitude, number one, life perspective, number two, and interestingly, number three, I would say, is empathy. You gain empathy when you experience something really difficult in your own life. You suddenly have a greater sensitivity to other people in need. And so that really helped drive my life purpose after that, right? So, but gratitude is something that really can change your mindset, and that's where a positive mindset comes in. And so gratitude was essential for me.
So I like to go back. I like to do my morning routine with gratitude practice and
Good for
meditation.
you.
Do you have a morning routine that you subscribe to?
I do part of what you do. So I start with gratitude for sure. That's the first thing I do. I'm grateful for another day. I'm grateful for everything that's happening at that moment. And yeah, so that's a great way to start your day. I think it's a great way to end your day. And that's really so instrumental in how people can have positivity in their life. Because when you think about the things you're grateful for, and there's always a million things, right? Um,
Right.
it changes your perspective so much, right? Because you start to realize, wow, why am I complaining? What is there to complain about? There's
Right.
1,000 things I'm grateful for right now. So,
Absolutely. You were young when it happened, and then you just kept going on through your life. So, at what point did you stop seeing your cancer as a burden and began viewing it as a gift?
it took, as I mentioned, it took about 6 years of surgery before I had this wake up call. And it came from this woman that I met who spoke some pretty tough words to me, um, that basically highlighted the fact that my weaknesses were not my physical appearance, which I thought they were. It was my inner self that was the problem. So the fact that she did that and said that really opened my ears and eyes. I mean, granted, Debbie, I had to absorb that. I had to reflect on it for a while. But that was really the impetus to change my life, to say, you know what? I'm done with surgery. I'm not doing this anymore because my bigger issue is my inner self. I got to rebuild who I am. Surgery is not going to fix my insecurities. I'm always going to be my own worst critic, right?
Right.
So that's
Oh,
when the yeah, so that's when the work began, but in a positive way. That's when I started to work on rebuilding who I was and started to put together my survival kit. So,
that's incredible. So, what does resilience mean to you personally? You've gone through a lot.
yeah, I think first of all, I would say that resilience is something that we all have the capacity to build, right? It's you learn to adapt, you recover from your setbacks, and I really believe that we all grow stronger from our experience. And to me, it was really about finding the inner strength, and I like to call it grit, because grit to me is a really important thing. I was never the smartest, I was never the most athletic, I was never any of those things, but I always had grit. I could work hard at anything. I could persevere through anything. And so yeah, I think resilience comes down to some of those things, but also that ability to have hope, right? You got to have hope. And hope to me came from so many things. It came from my religious faith. It came from the people around me, from my medical team, believe it or not, who I believed in when they told me they'd get me cured. I believed in them when they told me they'd get me reconstructed. And it doesn't even matter what the final outcome was, Debbie. The fact that I believed in these people gave me that hope. So hope is key.
So, can anyone develop resilience, or do you believe it only comes through struggle?
No, I think all of us live our lives with the capacity to build resilience, because I think that nobody's immune to setbacks, right? And whatever you want to call a setback, that's where we learn from our mistakes. And I think in the business world, you can relate to this, uh, being in real estate, and the fact that, not that you see rejection all the time, but that's the nature of the beast in any sales job, right? And so I think that we learn from every engagement we have, from every encounter, and sometimes we make mistakes. Maybe we made a mistake in that presentation. We didn't do better than the competition did, and so we lose that deal. And so we have to step back and think about what we learned. And so I think that we all have misfortunes of some kind, whether it's major or minor. And I think if you take the time to reflect, which is key in my life, take the time to reflect, think about what occurred, and make changes. That's resilience.
Right. In my book, I call it the pivot and adjust. We all have to
There you
pivot
go.
and adjust.
Yeah.
Before we go to your book, which I'm excited to dive into, um, what was I going to say? What was I going to say? Before going into your book, I wanted to ask another question. Okay. Oh, yes. So you've been speaking to real estate offices and real estate agents. You seem to do that a lot. And I believe whatever you're coaching is probably similar to any business person could use the advice. Can you share with us a few highlights from your talk yesterday or any real estate coaching session that you've given?
Yeah, I mean, I think that real estate is interesting because many people are very independent, right? So you're independent contractors in many cases. So cultures are impacted by that. You're somewhat on your own, even though you have the support. But you have to make the effort to build that support system, right? You've got to find mentors, you've got to find allies within the organization, people that can boost you up because it is tough on our confidence, right? When things don't go well. Um, I was with somebody last night who got multiple offers on this deal, and she had an offer that was way above ask, and she was really excited about it. But then it came down to the reload company, um, and so the whole thing kind of snowballed, and so you know, whether she can turn it around or not, but dealing with those changes, constant changes, and learning to embrace change. And I think that there's so many, real estate's an interesting area because there's a lot of change, right? There's new rules that are taking place and laws, et cetera. And so, but I always say, and I would always say embrace innovation, embrace disruption because disruption is going to happen. And all it's going to do is make you more efficient. It's going to make you better at what you do. You just have to step back and accept some of those things. But innovation is going to force you to learn new skills. It's going to force you to meet new people. And I apologize for the dog.
It's okay. We love him. Yeah, it's tough. No, and especially the last couple years, I'm sure on many businesses, not just realtors, but it's been a tough
Yeah.
couple of years. And yeah, it's tough when you don't get the deal or you don't get the listing and you kind of go back and go, how could I have done differently? And sometimes you just can't. I always believe that people connect with someone, whether there's experience or knowledge in those connections. It's just sometimes it's a personal connection and you can't do anything about it. But you can also step back if it's a different situation and learn from it. And then you kind of have to pivot and adjust and move on. But you're right. So tell us, you've written a couple books. So tell us about all the books. Tell us about the titles that you've written, and then we'll go into the resilience mindset.
Yeah, so I originally wrote a book called At Face Value, which was a memoir, and then that sort of got me speaking about my story, right, which became very therapeutic in and of itself, and that kind of led to a purpose in my life that was really rewarding, right, because I could start to help people, and that's where the empathy thing comes in, and um, found that if I could inspire people and help them on their own journeys, what better gift is there than that? So, but what happened, Debbie, was I would give these presentations, and I don't really focus on just the book that I write when I'm talking. I'm speaking about a lot of stuff, right? And so people would come up to me afterwards and said, I read your book before you came and spoke to us, and I know your story, but what you speak about are really the tools, the methods, the frameworks that can help other people. You should write another book. So eventually, eventually I listened, and I finally said, I need to do this. So that was really what drove me to write the resilience mindset, was really to kind of take my story and my experience and build a toolkit for other people, a framework for other people to deal with not just illness, not just physical illness, but any kind of adversity or challenge.
I love it. So
Yeah.
when you were first writing the first book, did you have a lot of people reach out to you who are going through tough times? And how might you have helped them in your conversations?
Yeah, so uh, there were a lot of people that reached out to me who were in very difficult, similar situations. Oftentimes, it was young people as well that were impacted by sarcomas, which, lots of jaw issues, different types of sarcomas, and disfigurement. And so, and to this day, I still deal with a lot of that. A lot of people thank God for technology because when I was going through it, there wasn't any. But when I wrote my book, suddenly the internet was there. There was people that could search and find you and look for resources. And so, yeah, it's been a blessing that I can work with people across the United States to help them on their own journeys.
I
Yeah.
love it. No, it's really great. So what and so you well, I can ask it again. What inspired you to write the resilience mindset? Was there more reasons other than that someone said you need to put it in a framework?
Yeah, I would say it was really primarily that, but it was telling myself that okay, I knew that I had built my own what I call my survival kit to help me get through my journey, and it's something I rely on to this day. But then I thought to myself, how do I translate that? Because I spoke about it a lot, but how do I translate it into something that can help somebody by reading a book? And so that was really where I started to figure out how to package it up in a way that was more prescriptive so that each section of my framework someone could literally go through and understand where they were in the process and I ask questions, and those questions are in turn are intended to help guide you on a path so that it personalizes to your own journey and provides you something actionable to take away. And I think when I realized that's what I needed to do, I needed to put it in some kind of a consumable framework. Then it sort of easily came together for me, and
Yeah,
so that was fun. It was fun to write it.
I bet. No, it's great. So can you walk us through your four-part rebar framework? The four. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Rebar.
rebar. Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of funny as I was kind of putting together the words to describe the four key phases of my framework. I looked at it and I'm like, rebar. That's interesting. It represents strength, right? Which is really what I wanted, kind of in the background. Although I didn't. It sort of happened, but yeah. So I can talk through the four key phases really quick if you'd like. Okay.
Yeah, you have to be quick. We want to learn about it.
What's
We want to use this framework. I love
All
frameworks.
right. Cool. So reflect is something that I really encourage throughout the book people to incorporate into their daily routines. You're already doing it, Debbie, but a lot of people don't. And so, what I mean by reflect is you take the time, and it can be during your walk in the middle of the day. It doesn't have to be first thing in the morning or last thing in the day, but find time for yourself, uninterrupted time, and start with gratitude, as I said. Focus on all the things you're grateful for, and you'll realize that when you do that, you suddenly feel better because you're in a more positive space. You're in a positive mindset now. And then the second part of reflect is really to do an audit of your day. So think about what transpired during the course of my day. Did I learn anything? Was I inspired by anything? If I was inspired by something, can I apply that to my life tomorrow? And what I'm asking people to do with reflection is incorporate it into your daily routine because make it a practice because we're not going to have inspirations every single day, but if you're in the practice of it, you'll start to recognize and identify things more readily. And we all know this. We're just hammered with information. We have lots of conversations. And if you don't take time to step back and think about them, you'll miss really key nuggets. I'm telling you, some of my greatest inspirations in life came from reflection and thinking about conversations I had with people, in many cases, those I didn't even know. So that's
Right.
reflection. The next phase, build, is really about developing a growth mindset. It's about developing a positive mindset. And so that's about identifying your support system. It's about figuring out how you're going to find work life balance. And it's about choosing positive because we choose our attitude. With those things, it's much easier to navigate life's roadblocks when you have positivity instead of fear and uncertainty. The third phase, act, is where the rubber meets the road, right? This is when we start to take control. This is when we uh, start to face challenges, and this is when we focus, and set goals. So I think of this as execution mode. This is the thickest part of REBAR because there's so many methods and tools. You mentioned meditation. That's one of them. Yoga, visualization. There's all kinds of tools, and it's not a one size fits all. Choose what works for you. Try things that work for you. But that's where you start to make progress and deal with your challenge. And then finally, renew. The final phase is really the reinforcement of the process. It's really that time when you commit to the process and you say to yourself, this is keeping me on a better path. So this is when you step back because you've survived the adversity. If you reach this point, you step back and realize, wow, I came through this. So celebrate that. Celebrate your wins. That helps build confidence. And then this is really important, Debbie. Step back and say, what are my traits and characteristics that enabled me to get through this ordeal? Think about those things. That helps you feel better about yourself, build confidence. But really, it's that reassessment of everything and the idea that what can I learn from this experience in your words, so that I can pivot and whatever it might be in terms of the scope of that pivot, but what did I learn to become a better version of myself and help propel me forward? So that's
I
kind of
love
what the frame consists of.
I love it. And I just want to give everyone a homework assignment that they put up on their whiteboard or on their mirror, put rebar, reflect, build, act, renew, and try to start to make it a habit and look at it. But I really love the reflect part because I call it locking in. I put headsets on in the morning and I'm like, too soon, don't talk to me, Adam. I'm like, I'm still in my space. So
Yeah.
that is super important. So we're going to go to a quick commercial break and we will be right back with Terry Healey. Thank you.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical. Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Welcome back to Mastering the Art of Success. I'm your host, Debbi DiMaggio. We are here with Terry Healey. So Terry just told us the framework of the 4-part REBAR framework of his new book, The Resilience Mindset, and reflect, build, act, renew. And because I'm visual and I see things visually, I've asked him if he could go through an example for us.
Yeah, happy to, Debbie. So I think probably the best is just to give you my own experience with how it was so easy for me to put this together because it's based on my own life experience. But So you want me to kind of talk through the tools or the methods I use within each one of these?
Yeah.
So I'll kind of hone in on a single example, maybe, or anecdote. So in reflect, the biggest turning point in my life came from reflection, and I alluded to it earlier in our conversation about a woman that I met. So I can give you a little bit more detail about this. This was a woman that I met when I was going through reconstruction. I met her in the hospital, believe it or not. Uh, we began to see each other. She took this immediate interest in me, and we developed this intimate relationship. Well, I only say that, Debbie, because it was the first intimate relationship I've had with someone who didn't know me as that old Terry.
Wow.
We went on a long weekend together, and at the end of that weekend, she looked at me and she said, "Terry, you have a lot of issues that I can't help you with, and you need constant reassurance, and I can't give you that." And so what she told me was really that it wasn't my physical appearance that was my issue. It was my internal issue that was the issue. But what it did was it was difficult. Obviously, it was. I don't want to say it was hurtful because I don't know if that's the right word, but it hurt, right?
Right.
But it enabled me to step back, and over the ensuing 2 to 3 weeks, I sat there and reflected a lot on that conversation, and I learned to be grateful for it because what she did was open my eyes to something that I hadn't really even thought about, which is that surgery is not going to fix your problems. It's never going to fix your problems. You're always going to be your own critic. Focus on how you're going to rebuild what's inside. So that was a big turning point for me because that's when I said I got to focus on what I can control, right, and not what I can't, which was surgery. So really, that was about kind of going to the next phase of build where now I'm kind of in a new mode, right? I'm starting to build my life in a new direction. I am now focusing on the next chapter, which is a career, something that I can dig my teeth into. It's finding purpose out of what I experienced, right? And so for me, that was really about expanding my network of people that I could find as a support system. So that became my first boss, who was a great mentor for me, also a Cal guy, um, and and uh, and things like that. And then act, the act phase was really where, as I said, kind of that's where the focus and goal orientation comes in. So the example I'll give there is that I realized at a certain point that my greatest challenge was my confidence, right? Because I had lost all of it and I was trying to rebuild it. And so what I learned in the workplace was, hey, I'm not the smartest, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I know I can work hard and I can get to the same place as anybody else. And so what I began to do, Debbie, was I started this concept of preparation, preparation over preparation. And I say it that way because I prepared for every meeting. I prepared for every speaking engagement to the point where I could deal with any objection that was going to come my way. So I probably worked harder on that. And that gave me the ability to stand in front of any group and say, hey, you can attack me. I'm comfortable with who I am now. I'm confident that I can speak about whatever business case I'm trying to deliver. And if you have questions about where it's going, I got plenty of data to back me up. So that was really key in helping me start to believe in myself again, right? That's where confidence comes from. And then finally, renew is just realizing that, wow, that kind of worked. That example actually worked for me. It's starting to have an impact on how I feel about myself. And so from there, it's just tweaking, right? It's really that growth mindset of saying, okay, there's still a lot of things that I'm not doing right. There's still mistakes I'm making. There's still a lot of room for improvement. How can I focus on that? And in your words, pivot and move forward. And so that's a, part of what I went through.
Well, I love it. Okay, so I'm visual. So I saw you shredding you pretty much shedded your skin of this handsome, hot prince of Miramonte. You were like, this woman knows, like, I have no confidence right now. You let that person go. You let that person die. And you became your new self. It's like you almost became Superman. All of a sudden, you're like, okay, I'm not that person anymore. And you just sprouted into this new Terry. And I would say probably even more confident, because now it's like you have a mission. Someone told you something. Wasn't She was just pointing something out, like it wasn't mean, but she pointed something out that she saw. She obviously cared about you. She went away for you for the weekend. She obviously thought you were a kind person. So then you had this wonderful confidence you started building up, and then you over prepared. You would prepare and prepare so you could be so confident when you stepped into the boardroom. So I love it. I think that is great. And to continue going back to that, people can continue going back to that again. So is that when you did the IPO? Was it during that time frame?
Yeah, well, it came a little bit later. So my mentor, who you probably know, Peter Jackson,
Oh
um,
yeah.
re- really was somebody that gave me opportunity. He believed in me despite he knew I had confidence issues, but he put me in these roles where I had to perform, right? So that was pressure, but it was good pressure. And so
Right.
yeah, I was kind of still going through that, and I think what was great about working for a startup and having high growth was that you know you're hiring people so fast that qualifying them becomes difficult. So now the challenge becomes, okay, how do you retain them? Because everybody's recruiting everybody. You're in a hot market. And that became a lot about what I learned, Debbie, that the empathy thing, the emotional intelligence. And that, what I mean by that is sort of like when you're managing people and you do it with empathy, you listen more. You make them feel like they're part of the solution, that you're not the leader that's making all the decisions. You're listening more, and you're hearing them, and you're sharing your vulnerabilities, and letting them know that, hey, I don't have all the answers. That's why I hired you. I want you to come back to me with a recommendation. And most people respond positively to that, right? Because that builds trust. And I think that helps with retention. People want to stay working for you when they know that they're valued, they're empowered. So yeah, a lot of that stemmed or fell into that whole thing.
I
So
love it. It's so inspiring. So, what simple tools can listeners start using today to build their own survival toolkit?
so I think it's as I said before, it's not one size fits all.
Right.
So I think that, but there are some common elements. I think it's, and not to sound like I'm repeating myself, but it's finding a team of people, right? That you feel are in your camp, that are positive energy, and that sometimes means making difficult choices, right? It means people that are negative energy, you know, try to distance yourself from that, because that's not going to help you during a time of crisis, or any time for that matter. I would say that finding focus in a singular goal. So I'm big on singular goals, Debbie, instead of, you know, 5 priorities or 10 goals. It's like it's too much. And I think if you have more than one, really, you probably have too many. So figure out what your focus is, and that's what you can go after and achieve and tackle. That whole positivity piece around gratitude, start to practice it, because that's easy, right? That shouldn't be hard for anybody. I mean, I can tell you countless stories of people that overcame odds way more difficult than my own, adversities way more difficult than my own. They're in my book. And you'll read these stories and go, wow, that guy got through that, or that woman got through that. Wow, that's stuff that you could never imagine dealing with in your own life. So gratitude, um, life balance. You talked about you're a visual person.
Mhm.
I have a whole section in my book about visualization and positive imaging, which I think is this another easy but powerful tool. I say it's easy because it is. I mean, I read 5 pages of a book and I said, I'm going to go do this right now. And I went and did it. It's easy. So, but it changes the trajectory of your life if you can focus on using things like positive imaging and visualization.
Absolutely. I love it. And do you also journal? Do you talk about journaling in your book as well?
Yeah, that's definitely an option for people. Not everybody is that way, but yeah, for sure.
And so I'm sure there's a number of chapters in your book. We talked about rebar. What are some of the other key points in your book that we can learn something from?
So last night, I'll tell you one chapter. It's called "Embrace Change," and it's toward the latter part of the book. I was speaking to this guy last night, and he said, his daughter just doesn't like change, and I'm like, well, how old is your daughter? And he's like, she's 23, and I'm like, well, she's going to have to learn to embrace it because that's what the world's all about, and it's accelerating faster and faster all the time, right? And especially if you're a young person in today's job market, right? It's like you have to be adaptable. It's tough out there. I mean, with AI and all these other things that are going on, it's you've got to be nimble and agile. So so yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with that exactly from your question. I'm trying to remember what the core of your
Oh,
question.
you spoke to someone last night about change. What are some
Oh
other?
yeah, a
Yeah.
chat. Yeah, so I have a whole section in the book about embracing change, and I use a lot of examples of workplace situations, right, where you have to think of them as opportunities because as difficult as reorganizations are, the uncertainty that goes with that, they never bothered me because to me it was always like, okay, I'm going to work with different leaders now. I'm going to learn from new people. I am going to make establish new relationships, and I'm probably going to have to learn new skills. But to me, those are exciting things, and I often so so that's an important chapter in the book, I think, because change is something that we don't have any choice with, but I just try to provide some real world examples. And then I would say really important to your question in terms of chapters that stand out is so I have 3 parts to my book. The third part is about the heroes that inspire me every day. And these are these other people I mentioned earlier who have these incredible stories of adversity. You'll be blown away by what they overcame and how they came through it and the methods that they use. They're somewhat consistent to mine, but they're unique experiences. Each adversity is different. And so, maybe if you read those, people can find something that's really relatable, or just say, wow, here's a guy who had 9 learning disabilities and look how he came out. You know,
Wow.
that's Sean Harper. Sean Harper is an amazing guy. So you'll read about him.
Well, choose one that you want to share. Share with us one of the people who came through adversity and how they did
So
it.
yeah, let's talk about Sean Harper. So Sean
Okay.
Harper was a young boy in Ohio who had 9 learning disabilities, including severe dyslexia. Okay. He could not do any of the things that his schoolmates could. He was bullied constantly. But he sort of had a strong spirit. He credits that with his mother and his family. And he believed in himself still, despite all of that. He said, you know what? I'm going to become a professional football player. And so Sean was smart enough to know that in order to become a professional football player, not only do you have to be top of your game, but you've got to graduate from high school. You've got to go to a major collegiate program um, that you can get drafted out of, right? I mean, yeah, you can find alternative ways, but it's not going to happen. I mean, to get in the NFL, you really need to be at a good collegiate program. He found a way to do that. And he became an NFL football player. He played in the NFL for 7 years. But here's what tops it all off, Debbie. Guess what he is now? He's a CEO of a security company.
Wow. I just got the chills.
He is, and
Incredible.
he's a speaker. He's a speaker. He is the most motivating guy you'll ever meet.
He's a
Unbelievable
speaker
dude.
too. Wow, that's incredible. 9 learning disabilities. He went on to play football and have a career after that, because not all football players go on to have careers after football. At least nothing, not as big as this person. Wow, that's
Unbelievable
incredible.
story. But they're
Wow,
they're myriad stories, right? Some are physical, some are like that.
right.
Abuse is one of them. So it's all over the map.
Right. That's awesome. Okay, so workplace sensitivity approaches to celebrating visible differences and identifying the next great servant leaders. So what are how do you you were obviously a leader in your company. How did you handle that?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question because uh, people that have visible differences, we probably don't think of them that often because we probably don't. If you're not one of them, you don't necessarily maybe notice it as much. But 20% of people self-identify as having some kind of a visible difference, which is a lot, and 80% of those people do not apply for new jobs, do not seek out employment because of the fact that they either don't feel good enough about themselves or they think they'll be discriminated against. And so one of the things I talk about is I really want HR professionals to think about the hiring practices and say, you know, let's just incorporate a question to level set. Everybody gets asked something about, hey, talk to me about an adversity that you've overcome in your life. And typically, people, if they're open to doing it, might share their story about what happened to them and why they have a visible difference, how they grew up different. What you learn is that they have incredible skills. And what you find as leaders is that these people bring empathy to their organizations, they're more comfortable with change, and they have better life perspective. So they can be great, servant leaders. If you're familiar with the concept of servant leadership, there's 6 principles of servant leadership. And I'm big on that because servant leadership is about empowerment. It's about the growth of your people as opposed to the growth of yourself. That's a good leader, right? Somebody that's growing their people. And the principle I like the most about servant leadership, or the one I hone in on, is the one that's about being real. And being real is about admitting that you don't always have the answers. It's about going to your people and saying, "Hey, I need help with this. You guys got to step up." And it's Debbie, it's really about finding the courage to share vulnerabilities. And that really does help build trust. People want to work for somebody that shares their vulnerabilities because then they're a real person.
Right.
It's like this isn't somebody on a pedestal. This is somebody that's just like me in so many ways. And so you become um, somebody that I think is energized by that. And so that's kind of how I see it. And I think that organizations that embrace inclusive cultures that include people with visible differences tend to have significantly higher job satisfaction rates, and that goes for everybody in the company. So
Right. No, I love it. I think that is excellent. So if someone listening is facing their own adversity today, what's the one piece of advice you'd want them to carry with them?
what I would say is open yourself up. Be open, be aware, be alert, be attentive to all the things that are happening around you. Uh, don't hide. Get out there to the degree that you can and listen to people. Be open to conversations. Be open to discussions that maybe you normally wouldn't be, because I'm convinced that little nuggets come out that help propel us forward in ways that we never imagined. It might not be noticeable at that moment, but this goes back to reflection. If you can take that time and think about all the conversations you had and the nuggets that might come from that, that can really help change the trajectory of your life. Maybe temporarily, maybe permanently, but in a positive way. So it goes back to what I keep talking about, which is reflection and but being open to what's happening around you is so key. And it came up last night in the discussion, that I really feel like people need to, there was someone in the room that was sick, who was dealing with cancer, and he had quit his job. And so now his focus was 100% on his illness, and it was going to support groups. It was taking care of his medical needs. And I would never judge that. That's fine if that's the approach that you feel you need to take. But I think that trying to keep your life full is really, really important during that time, because that's when outside influences are going to come in and potentially help you move in a new direction in a positive way, so that you're not just consumed by your own situation.
No, I agree. Well, your book is going to help a lot of people, because I think they're going to probably, with all the different stories that you share, there's probably going to be some nuggets that will help people see themselves in that person. So we're just about to wrap it up. So what would you tell your younger self now, where you are today, looking back? What would you tell that 20-year-old or 25-year-old self?
Goes back to what we talked about. I would say embrace change, and you will gain tremendous wisdom. I think that it's not about fearing it. It's really about embracing it. And I think about so many things in life kind of go in a trajectory, right? In a positive trajectory, but that doesn't mean that it's a straight line. It means that there's ups and downs along. It's the stock market graph. Like, look at this
That's
S&P.
right.
Look at the S&P 500 or the Dow, whatever index you want to talk about, and look at over time how it's performed, right? It's up and to the right, but that doesn't mean that there aren't huge setbacks along the way, or small setbacks. But yeah, embrace change, because you might have minor setbacks, but ultimately, maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes 2 years. Ultimately, you'll be in a better place. That's what I would tell myself.
I love it. So Terry, how do people follow you, get a hold of you? When can they see you speak? Uh, Give us a list of how we can get in touch and continue to learn
Okay.
from.
Yeah, thanks for that. We are live, right?
We are.
Okay, so I have an event tonight in Redwood City at Fireside Books and More, where I'll be giving a presentation on the resilience mindset on my new book. It's a free event. You're welcome to come. I'd love to see anybody there that wants to join. Yeah, you can find me on my website, which is terryhealey.com. I'm on Instagram at Terry Healey US. On LinkedIn, those are probably the two main platforms I'm on. LinkedIn, Terry Healey, Instagram, and my website has all the information.
Wonderful. Wow. Well, this was so inspiring. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I look forward to coming to see you speak soon myself. And I will push it out there, your book signing chat tonight.
I look forward to your new book as well, Debbie.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me as a guest.
It was wonderful.
Tune in each week for another episode of Mastering the Art of Success with host Debbi DiMaggio. Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern. Real stories, real strategies, real success.